The sun dipped behind the western ridge, leaving the land bathed in the kind of gold that only late summer could summon. Dust hung in the air, soft and heavy, clinging to the wind like a memory that refused to fade. Caleb Murren wiped the back of his hand across his brow and squinted toward the horizon, watching the cattle scatter in the distance, silhouettes moving like ghosts through the heat haze. It had been a long day, the kind that stripped a man down to his bones and made him wonder if the land would ever give back what it took. He had just swung down from his horse when he heard it, a sharp cry carried on the wind, thin and high but unmistakably human. Caleb froze, listening. The sound came again, fainter this time, from the north pasture where the old wire fence ran along the creek. He cursed under his breath, grabbed the coiled rope from his saddle and started running. The grass whipped at his boots, and the sky darkened as clouds rolled in from the mountains. By the time he reached the fence line, the first drops of rain were spattering against the earth. That's when he saw her. Ellie Rollins was crouched by one of the posts, her skirts tangled in the mud, her arm caught against a loose strand of barbed wire. Blood trickled down from a deep cut just above her elbow, staining the fabric dark. She looked up when she heard him approach, her eyes flashing like a cornered fox. "Don't just stand there, Caleb," she snapped. "It's got me." He dropped to his knees beside her, prying the twisted wire away from her arm. "What the hell were you doing out here?" "Your fence was down," she said through clenched teeth. "Your cattle were crossing onto our land again. I figured you'd be too proud to ask for help." He grunted, freeing her arm with a sharp tug. The wire snapped loose, and Ellie stumbled back, clutching the wound. "You're bleeding bad. I've had worse. You're stubborn as ever. And you're still as slow as molasses," she muttered. He couldn't help but smirk. Even hurt, she was full of fire. That was Ellie Rollins, the woman who could outshoot most men in town, who rode bareback like she was born in the saddle, and who'd once told him she'd rather live and die alone than marry any man foolish enough to think he could tame her. Lightning cracked across the sky, and rain came down in sheets. Caleb grabbed her good arm and pulled her toward the barn. She resisted for half a second, pride flaring in her eyes, but then the thunder rolled again. Closer this time, and she relented. By the time they reached the barn, both were soaked through. The place smelled of hay, sweat, and horses, a familiar scent that always seemed to calm him. Caleb shut the door against the storm and turned back to her. She sat on a hay bale, her chest rising and falling fast, her arm bleeding freely through the torn fabric. He found a clean rag and the small basin he used to water the pups, filling it from the rain barrel outside. When he turned back, Ellie was struggling with her sleeve, trying to peel the wet fabric away from her skin. "Stop," he said. "You'll make it worse. I can't get it off without tearing it." Her voice trembled, not from fear, but frustration. "Just make it quick. I'm taking it off." Caleb froze. Her words hit him harder than they should have. For a moment, all he could hear was the rain hammering the roof. She met his eyes, steady and defiant. "Don't go all shy on me now, Caleb Murren. It's my arm, not my soul." He swallowed hard, trying to find his voice. "All right then." She turned slightly, the lantern light catching the curve of her shoulder as she pulled the torn sleeve down. The fabric fell away, revealing smooth, pale skin beneath the dirt and blood. Caleb felt his heartbeat stumble. He'd seen wounds before. He'd stitched up ranch hands, horses, even himself. But never had he felt so unsteady holding a cloth. He knelt beside her, dipping the rag into the basin. "This'll sting. I can take it," she said, her chin lifting slightly. He pressed the cloth to the wound, and she hissed, gripping the edge of the hay bale. His hand brushed her skin, warm, soft, trembling slightly under his touch. The air seemed to thicken, the barn closing in around them. "You should have let me fix the fence," he murmured. "You'd have waited till morning," she said, her voice low. "Your herd would have been halfway to Montana by then." He smirked faintly. "Always have to be the hero, don't you?" Her eyes softened. "Someone's got to be when you won't." He looked up then, really looked at her. The way her hair clung to her face in dark, wet strands, the streak of mud across her cheek, the stubborn tilt of her mouth. She was infuriating, reckless, impossible, and he'd never wanted anyone more. He finished cleaning the wound, then tore a strip from a clean sack and wrapped it around her arm. His hands worked slowly, carefully, tying it tight but gentle. "There," he said quietly. "You'll live." She glanced at the bandage, then back at him. "You always were good with your hands." Caleb blinked. "You say that like it's a bad thing. Depends who's on the receiving end," she murmured. He laughed softly, the sound surprising both of them. It had been a long time since laughter had come easy to him. Outside, thunder rolled again, echoing across the valley. Ellie flinched as lightning flashed through the cracks in the barn wall. Instinctively, her hand found his chest. He froze, feeling her heartbeat quick against his own for a long moment. Neither moved. Rain pattered on the roof. The horses shifted in their stalls. And time seemed to stretch thin as silk. "You should rest," he said finally, though his voice was rough. "Storm's not letting up anytime soon." She didn't take her hand away. "And you gonna stand there and watch me all night?" He hesitated, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Wouldn't be the worst thing I've done." Her lips curved, a rare, quiet smile that softened her whole face. "You always did know how to talk your way into trouble. Guess I never learned how to talk my way out of it." She laughed then, the sound soft and low. It warmed something deep in him. She pulled back just enough to look at him, her eyes glimmering in the lantern light. "You ever think maybe trouble's what you've been needing, Ellie?" She leaned closer, her breath brushing his neck. "Sometimes," she whispered, "the right thing isn't the one that's easy. It's the one that scares you the most." He didn't have a chance to answer. Her lips found his before he could think. Before he could remind himself who she was or how many times they'd sworn. They'd never crossed this line. The kiss was fierce, like the storm outside, wild and electric and alive. When she finally pulled back, her eyes searched his face, as if waiting for him to regret it. But he didn't. He couldn't. He reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "You're playing with fire, Ellie. Maybe I like the burn." The rain eased to a steady drizzle. The thunder faded to a distant growl. Caleb stood, offering her his hand. "Come on. You can take the bed. I'll stay by the fire." She stared at his hand for a moment, then took it. "Always the gentleman." He smiled faintly. "Only when you make me." She laughed again, a soft, disbelieving sound, and followed him toward the small room off the barn, where he sometimes slept during calving season. He lit another lantern and set it by the bed. The air was warm and still, smelling faintly of cedar and smoke. Ellie sat down, her injured arm cradled close, watching him. "You're a hard man to figure out, Caleb Moran," he shrugged, leaning against the doorframe. "Ain't much to figure. I fix fences, feed cattle, keep to myself, and kiss women bleeding in your barn." He chuckled. "That part wasn't planned." She tilted her head. "Maybe it should have been." He looked at her for a long moment, the flicker of the lantern dancing across her face. "You're something else, Ellie. Is that good or bad?" He smiled slowly. "Guess I'll find out." The wind sighed outside, soft now, like the land itself was exhaling after the storm. Ellie lay back against the pillow, her eyes fluttering shut. "You can sit, she murmured. "You don't have to stand guard." "I might, if it keeps you out of trouble." "I'm already in trouble," she whispered, her voice fading into the quiet. "Don't you know that?" He watched her for a long time, the steady rise and fall of her breathing, the faint curve of her lips. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, whether she'd ride back home at dawn and pretend none of this happened, or whether she'd stay and change everything he thought he knew about his life. All he knew was that the storm had passed, and in its wake, something new had begun, something neither of them had planned, but both had felt coming for years. Weeks later, when the valley had turned green again, and the air was thick with the smell of spring, the people in town began to talk. They said Ellie Rollins had moved her things into the Moran place. They said the old rancher had finally smiled in church. They said a man who spent half his life alone had finally found the one person who could match him. Word for word, fire for fire. When asked what changed, Caleb would only touch the brim of his hat and say with a quiet smile, "Guess all it took was one storm and one stubborn woman." And from that night on, the man who'd sworn he'd never have a wife woke each morning beside the woman who'd said she'd never be one. Proof that sometimes fate didn't ask permission. It just waited for the right moment to strike.